Good evening. It's Monday, the 27th of October. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. The Knesset winter session got underway today with a series of pressing issues on the agenda. Standing by at the Knesset is IBA's political reporter Eli Wogelenter. Eli, what are you anticipating as the major issues, and is the survival of the coalition in doubt?
Good evening. Let me say right off the bat, there is no talk whatsoever of any kind of coalition crisis. Nobody inside the coalition, and I would imagine anyone outside the coalition, believes that there's any chance, danger of this government falling, which is not to say that there won't be any disagreements. A series of controversial bills will come before the Knesset plenum this session, starting with the parliament's most pressing order of business, passing the 2015 state budget. Many battles have already been fought over the upcoming budget. The most noteworthy is probably over Finance Minister Yair Lapid's proposal to eliminate the value-added tax on new home purchases for young couples. But he and Prime Minister Netanyahu reached an agreement, so it's not expected to prevent the passage of the budget. But before it comes to the floor, the Knesset Finance Committee will discuss the cost of living in Israel. The opposition plans to submit hundreds of objections and amendments to the budget, so that could hold it up for a while. Another issue on the table, the conversion law. The coalition is divided on this bill. Beit Yehudi opposes it, but supports the compromise version, while Hatnuah and Yesh Atid support it. Netanyahu has withdrawn his support, but it could still pass. Elazar Stern of Hatnuah, who proposed the bill, said again today that if this law does not pass, he will quit the Knesset. And the roster of MKs will change slightly this term. First, we have the retirement of Interior Minister Gideon Sa'ar, and with his departure, Yesh Atid will become the largest faction with 19 seats, as Likud will drop down 1 to 18. Yisrael Beitenu will gain a 13th MK, Leon Litinetsky, who is returning to the Knesset after previously serving in the 17th Knesset. At least 2 other MKs are expected to leave the Knesset in the coming months. Yisroel Hasson of Kadima is now a candidate to manage the Antiquities Authority. If he is chosen, he will be replaced by former Kadima MK Roni Tirosh. And Hadash leader Mohammed Barakai plans to fulfill an election promise. He said he would resign from the Knesset after 2 years so that the next person on his party's list, Nabila Espaniola, can become a legislator. In any case, a festive feeling here on opening day as the MKs return to work after being off nearly 90 days. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks for that report. Well, at the start of the winter session of the 19th Knesset Speaker Yuli Edelstein referred to the difficult summer and the lives lost in Operation Protective Edge, but stressed that despite our pain, our message to our enemies is clear. Continued aggression is not a deterrence. He went on to say that 7 wars and numerous military operations have not spoiled Israel's dream of a thriving economic and democratic nation. Edelstein said that violence in Jerusalem is unacceptable and that the city's seam between East and West will not become like the border with Gaza. Edelstein then lashed out against Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas for scuttling the peace process and taking unilateral action that he said will harm the prospects for reaching an agreement. Edelstein then introduced his predecessor as Knesset Speaker, President Reuven Rivlin. President Rivlin warned that Israelis must begin to respect one another or risk the deterioration of society, and that the government and the Knesset are obligated to do more to counter racism and prejudice. He scolded the Knesset members for not speaking out against such acts, rhetorically asking if there is anyone who thinks that the burning of a mosque isn't a crime or believes that the stoning of a Jewish-owned vehicle is not a crime. The president insisted that no one should remain silent if concepts such as equality and respect for fellow citizens are not understood. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that there will be no Palestinian state without a peace agreement and security. He asked Knesset members who will prevent rockets being manufactured in the West Bank or tunnels dug in Tulkarem, provoking heckling from across the political spectrum, including from MKs Ariel Margolit, Gilad Erdan, and Zahava Galon. Netanyahu remained undeterred by the outbursts, saying that Israel gave back Gaza, Gush Katif, and the entire Strip to the Palestinian Authority. Then he asked who will ensure peace and stop terror, and that he is certain that those who are listening would agree that it won't be the United Nations forces. Peace cannot be built on lies or illusions, he said, before going on to say, what is the point in drawing borders if you don't know what kind of state you're going to have on the other side, adding that Israel is in danger of having a state run by the Islamic State on its borders. He rejected claims that the government is violating the status quo in Jerusalem, insisting that everyone of all faiths are guaranteed access to holy places. He also rejected accusations that construction in the capital is sparking violence, saying that Israel has the right to build in Jewish neighborhoods in Jerusalem as well as in West Bank settlement blocks. Opposition leader Isaac Herzog blasted Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying that there's no reason to leave him in office since he failed to bring peace, that the economy has worsened, there are no solutions to the housing crisis, and no hope for the future. Herzog accused the Prime Minister of being afraid to make decisions and of being aloof and cut off from the people. He charged Netanyahu with being personally responsible for ruining relations with the United States and said that his actions are resulting in the division of Jerusalem. According to Herzog, the public isn't stupid and will make Netanyahu pay with the loss of his job. Well, as the winter Knesset session opened, IBA's Eli Wogelenter heard from several MKs about their respective parties' priorities in the coming term. Our reporter also heard from Knesset Speaker Yuli Edelstein about his expectations for the winter session.
My personal priority is to see Knesset working hard, but without any kind of, verbal violence or all kinds of things that I don't want to see anymore happening in the plenary session or in different committees of the Knesset. Having said that, I think that the priorities are all set for the last, 65 or 66 years. This is the time when the government brings the budget to the Knesset. This will be the main discussion in 3-4 leading committees here during the plenary sessions. I haven't seen any budget that left the Knesset in the exact same form it entered it. So I think that this will be the main priority of most Knesset members in the next couple of months.
Are you confident it will pass?
I don't know of many examples when the budget, after passing the government, couldn't pass the Knesset. There will be changes. There will be different things taken out and different things moved in. But I think that the coalition will still pass the budget.
I think that the first issue is the law that I'm suggesting today, which means to balance between the government, the parliament, and the Supreme Court. I think that Israel should be like in Britain and in Canada. In the end, in these two countries, the last word is the word of the parliament, not of the Supreme Court. In the US, for example, the Supreme Court can cancel law, but the political system choosing the judges. In Israel, it's like in Britain, the way we choose the judges. So I wanted that the last word will be of the parliament.
Well, we're going to do our best to cut our losses short from the bad budget that this government is bringing and from the damages it causes to the Israeli society, both economically, both politically, in every other aspect. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do our best, as I said, to cut our losses short and to show the Israeli public that they have a very reliable alternative.
First of all my colleagues in all the coalition parties need to be with a lot of patience to work together in this term, and it's not easy. Like you know, it's not a natural coalition, and we have a lot of things like we need to pass the budget, and there's a lot of laws that we need to work together on them. And let's hope that it will be okay. I'm not sure that everything will go with calm situation. We will hear a lot of noises around, but it will be okay.
Well, of course, the top of the priority, I would say, to bring in a situation that we can really have the state of Israel strong and with security, and with any kind of negotiations with the Palestinians, we have to promise ourselves and we have to make sure that we are not going to lose in another battle now. That's the main. The second thing, of course, on the economic and the social field, we have to to help people, and especially young couples.
The top priority for Yesh Atid in this winter session, first of all, is the passing of the budget, a budget which we call a budget of hope, which poured huge amounts of money, extra money, into education, into welfare, into health, and security, not raising taxes along the way. Along with that will be numerous projects that we have to bring down the cost of housing, including the 0% VAT tax. We are very optimistic, not only obviously about all this passing, but about the results for the betterment of the quality of life in Israel.
The Knesset Ministerial Committee on Legislation has approved a proposed bill that would allow a 61 Knesset member vote to override High Court rulings that strike down laws deemed to be unconstitutional. The bill was submitted by Habayit Yehudi MK Ayelet Shaked in response to a recent judicial decision to annul the infiltration law passed by the Knesset that was aimed at combating the influx of illegal immigrants. Committee members approved the proposed legislation in a vote of 8-3 yesterday. Justice Minister Tzipi Livni opposed the bill and immediately filed an appeal, effectively freezing the legislative process until it's returned to the committee for a second vote. Ministers from the Yesh Atid faction also opposed the bill. Explaining her reasoning for pushing a law, Knesset member Shaked said that if there's a substantial disagreement between appointed judges and elected officials on whether a certain law is appropriate for the country's values or not, it is proper that the values of the public take precedence. Joining me now in the studio is Hebrew University political science professor Avram Diskin, who is also the director of a program at the Sharei Mishpat Academic Center. Good evening, Professor Diskin. Thanks for coming in. All right, let's start with this proposed legislation from MK Shaked. Is this a democratic way to ensure that the rights of the people are being heard, or is it some sort of an attempt by the right wing to bypass the High Court?
No, actually, I think that what we have now is really against the rule of law, and also causes major problems to the Israeli democracy.
In what way?
In what way? I think that during the last 2 decades, even a little bit more than that, the Supreme Court took responsibilities which were not in its hands before, like interfering in decisions of the executive and like canceling laws. I think it happened about 12 times or something like that, and that's without any real authority given to the Supreme Court by law. So it's really, we have a very, very problematic situation. I would say that what we have today is that the Supreme Court is bypassing the democracy and the Knesset rather than the other way around. I also think that the proposal made by Habayit Yehudi is really counterproductive. I think that the Supreme Court, in order to strengthen itself, should be interested in that proposal. Why so? Because if there is a way to override this power of cancelling laws, I think the Supreme Court does have a free hand, to do whatever it wants. And I don't see the power of the Knesset or the majority in the Knesset to decide otherwise once this power, which will be given to the Supreme Court by this law, is really given. So I think it's a very, very problematic law. I don't think that's going to reach its goal, although I do agree that something about the balance of power between the Supreme Court and the executive and the parliament should be done. What we have now is really endangering both the rule of law and also the Israeli democracy.
Professor Diskin, now let's talk about the other big story of the day, the opening of the winter Knesset session. What, in your view, are we likely to see happen in this session? Will there be any surprises, any major legislation, any bombshells?
I think that we have a very, very problematic coalition. That was quite clear immediately after the elections of 2013. And I think that's quite a miracle that the coalition somehow maneuvers in spite of the internal conflicts and the tensions, and I think it's going to continue. But for the time being, what we could have expected is a major conflict concerning the budget.
Right.
And it looks right now that this is more or less settled. There are very good chances that the budget will be passed. There is an internal agreement inside the coalition, so it's not going to be that smooth, but probably it will pass, and that is the major, I would say, obstacle in the short run. In the long run, we know from the past that, person A meets person B, and they make decisions that hurts both of them, and we have new elections and cancellation of that. We had several occasions like that in the last Knesset.
It's true.
Meetings between Mofaz and Bibi, and then Mofaz decided the other way, and then just before the elections, Netanyahu and Lieberman. So
that's right.
It's an interesting country, and we should expect.
We never know. We can expect the unexpected. Professor Avram Diskin, as always, thanks for coming in this evening.
Thank you.
Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu has given the green light to the planning authorities to advance the construction of 1,060 housing units in East Jerusalem. Officials at the Prime Minister's office said this morning that 660 will be built in the Ramat Shlomo neighborhood, with the 400 others in Har Homa. Justice Minister Tzipi Livni blasted the decision as irresponsible, and Finance Minister Yair Lapid warned Netanyahu that the move is likely to further damage ties between Washington and Jerusalem. The approval of the new construction plans occurred the same day that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas sent an urgent message to U.S. President Barack Obama, calling on the American administration to intervene and stop Israel from violating the existing status quo in East Jerusalem, specifically on the Temple Mount. While Netanyahu's office is refusing to confirm or deny a Channel 2 report that he is considering the approval of 2,000 additional housing units in West Bank settlements, not all of which would be located in the settlement blocks. Israel and Jordan marked 20 years since they signed a peace treaty in a special ceremony last night at the Rabin Center in Tel Aviv. The Jordanian ambassador cautioned against Jewish settlements in the West Bank or changing the religious status quo on Temple Mount in Jerusalem's Old City. We get more from IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan.
20 years since that historic day when the Jewish state and the Hashemite kingdom made peace. No one knew if the peace would last this long, but it has, and last night some 300 people attended the ceremony to mark the event. It's a cold peace, however, and only 3 of those attending were Jordanians, the ambassador Walid Obidat and 2 other officials. And the ambassador wasn't mincing his words.
It is therefore imperative that all unilateral actions and measures must stop to give peace negotiations a serious chance for success. Settlement activity in the occupied West Bank and in East Jerusalem must be halted in order to validate that negotiations are serious. Equally important, Jordan expects all attempts or calls at altering the status quo in Al-Haram al-Sharif compound, in Al-Haram al-Sharif Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, to be stopped.
Sensitive to Jordan's sensitivities, Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon said that needless tensions in holy places should be avoided with Jordan, and Israel should not be diluted on the Palestinian front. He said as Defense Minister he wouldn't compromise on the security and lives of Israeli citizens or gamble with them. The dichotomy between last night's ceremony and the original one in the Arava 20 years ago could not be more apparent.
This is peace with dignity. This is peace with commitment. This is our gift to our peoples and the generations to come.
To the mother of the Jordanian newborn, a blessed day to you. To the mother of the Israeli newborn, a blessed day to you. The peace that was born today gives us all the hope that the children born today will never know war between us, and their mothers will know no sorry.
I say to the people of Israel and Jordan, now you must make this peace real, to turn no man's land into every man's home, to take down the barbed wire, to remove the deadly mines, to help the wounds of war to heal. Open your borders, open your hearts. Peace is more than an agreement on paper. it is feeling, it is activity, it is devotion.
On the surface, the peace today with Jordan is a cold one, but beneath the surface, it's a firm strategic alliance that neither country is interested in exposing or losing after 20 years. Aria O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Hundreds attended the late-night funeral at the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem for Karen Mosquera, a 20-year-old from Ecuador who was critically injured in last Wednesday's terror attack and succumbed to her wounds yesterday. Her death raises the number of fatalities to 2, along with 3-month-old Chaya Zissel Brown, who was killed when a Palestinian terrorist, Abd al-Rahman al-Shaludi, rammed his vehicle into a group of Palestinians. Mosquera came to the country a year and a half ago and was in the process of converting to Judaism. The victim's mother and sister were present at the funeral, which was also attended by Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat, the Ecuadorian ambassador, rabbis and friends who described Karen Mosquera as a quiet girl who believed in her path and fought to become a Jew. The burial of the 21-year-old terrorist who perpetrated the Wednesday attack was also held last night under a heavy police presence in the Silwan neighborhood of East Jerusalem. Only 20 members of the Shaludi family were permitted to attend in accordance with a ruling from the Jerusalem court to maintain the peace. Earlier, violence erupted as the funeral procession made its way to the cemetery, with mass Palestinians throwing rocks and firebombs at security services. One of the rioters was arrested by police. President Rivlin travels to Warsaw tonight for his first trip abroad since taking office. Rivlin will be attending the opening of a new Jewish museum in the Polish capital, dedicated to the history of a community that was virtually eliminated during the Holocaust. We get more in this report from IBA's Nurit Finger.
1989, the fall of communism. There's a revival of Jewish life on a small scale, but enormous Jewish presence in Polish consciousness. This is the story that the Museum of the History of Polish Jews tells, a story of life.
The opening of the main exhibition at Warsaw's newly built Museum of the History of Polish Jews sets out to remember not just how Jews in Poland died, but mainly how they lived.
We have a moral responsibility to know that history, to know that civilization, and to transmit it to generations to come.
Built on the site of the former Jewish ghetto and funded by the Polish state, the technologically advanced exhibition enables visitors to make the most of their experience by using multimedia facilities, recreating scenes of everyday life.
We have to know how they lived, how they learned, how they behaved as merchants, or as friends, or as engineers, or as poets, mainly as sages and dreamers.
The highlight of the exhibition is the reconstruction of a synagogue made of wood from the 17th century with its polychrome painted ceiling. 300 volunteers of all ages and religions from all over the world built the house of worship with their own hands.
This is being built here, in Poland, in Warsaw, in Muranów, and on the site of the Warsaw Ghetto.
While the Jewish community was almost entirely obliterated by Nazi Germany during the Holocaust, the new Warsaw Museum sets out to revive the memory of the largest and most vibrant lost Jewish communities. This is Nurit Finger for IBA News.
Now taking a look at local finance, and the shekel today put in a mixed performance, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were down across the board. Here's a look at the late afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team says we can expect partly cloudy skies and another slight drop in temperatures tomorrow. Here's the forecast at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this evening. We hope to see you again tomorrow at our regular time of 5 o'clock, when I'll be back to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.